On March 15, 1944, at the Aada Communications Unit near Tokyo, Commander Atsuzo Kurihara stared at an intercepted transmission. For 18 hours, Japan's finest cryptanalysts had attempted to decode American Marine Corps tactical communications from the Marshall Islands operation. The sounds defied every technique in their arsenal. The patterns suggested structured military orders. Timing, duration, and frequency matched Marine Corps protocols. Yet the language remained impenetrable, unlike anything in their extensive files. Kurihara commanded one of the world's most sophisticated signals intelligence operations, employing 500 personnel. His team had successfully broken the American Purple Code before Pearl Harbor and penetrated numerous British and Army codes throughout the war. Yet these Marine transmissions represented a complete cryptographic failure. 3 years into the war, Japan's best minds couldn't decipher even basic patterns in these mysterious messages. What Kurihara didn't know was that he was listening to the only unbroken code in modern military history. The story began in the American Southwest, where for centuries the Navajo people had preserved a language, defied, unlike any other on Earth. Confined almost entirely to a 27,000-square-mile reservation, the language possessed linguistic characteristics that would ultimately confound the Japanese. Navajo is fundamentally verb-centered, using complex prefix combinations to describe actions. It employs 4 distinct tones, high, low, rising, and falling, that completely alter word meanings. Even a slight mispronunciation could render an entire sentence incomprehensible. Crucially, its phonology included sounds absent from Japanese and English, such as ejective stops and glottalized sonorants. For Japanese speakers trained in a language with just 5 vowel sounds, accurately hearing and replicating these phonemes was virtually impossible. Philip Johnston, born on the reservation in 1892, grew up speaking Navajo fluently, one of fewer than 30 non-Navajos who could. After Pearl Harbor, Johnston read about limited attempts by the Army to use Comanche and Choctaw speakers. Johnston envisioned a formal military code based on this linguistic fortress, one that would be both unbreakable and practical for modern warfare. In February 1922, Johnston presented his proposal to Major General Clayton Vogel. A demonstration at Camp Elliott proved revolutionary. Navajo speakers completed a message transmission in 20 seconds compared to 30 minutes using the standard M209 cipher machine. Vogel authorized a pilot program. On May 4, 1942, 29 Navajo recruits, including Chester Nez and Carl Gorman, were sworn into the Marine Corps. Working in a locked, guarded building for 8 weeks, they created a code that merged their native language with military necessity. They used cultural logic to create terminology for concepts that didn't exist in Navajo. A submarine became Beshlo, iron fish swimming beneath the surface. A battleship was Lotso, the ocean's largest creature. A fighter plane was Aada hitihi, hummingbird. Bombers were zh, buzzards. The alphabet system was secured by assigning multiple, randomly alternated Navajo words to each English letter, preventing frequency analysis. They created 211 initial terms and memorized every one, as the risk of capture meant no codebooks could exist. As Chester Nez recalled, "We drilled endlessly. A mistake could cost lives. In our culture, words have power." The code's first test came at Guadalcanal in August 1942. 15 code talkers landed with the 1st Marine Division. Japanese intelligence, which had expected the invasion, suddenly found Marine tactical messages incomprehensible. Lieutenant Kazuo Yamada, reporting from Rabaul, noted the sounds were structured like language, but completely alien. The Japanese response was systematic. They assigned top cryptanalysts, recorded hundreds of hours on wax cylinders, and consulted university linguists and even Buddhist monks. Nothing worked. On November 8, 1942, a 14-second transmission of artillery coordinates by Chester Nez was intercepted, but remained meaningless noise. Within minutes, American shells fell precisely on target. Colonel Haruo Konouma later wrote, "The Americans have deployed a code that defeats every attempt. We can no longer anticipate attacks. We are fighting blind." Joe Kalyumia, a Navajo soldier captured at Bataan in April 1942, became Japan's best hope for breaking the code, but he had no knowledge of the new military military code. Japanese interrogators played him code talker recordings, and Kayumiya heard Navajo words but in meaningless combinations, such as, "The turtle is attacking the iron fish," "The hummingbird carries eggs." When he couldn't translate, the torture escalated systematically over 3.5 years of captivity. He could only repeat the truth. He understood the words, but not their military meaning. A May 1943 Japanese intelligence report documented their frustration, concluding the enemy used a specialized code within the native language requiring specific training. Kayumiya's inability to help, even under extreme duress, convinced Japanese intelligence they faced something unprecedented. By late 1943, they largely abandoned attempts to decode the transmissions. The code's success at Guadalcanal led to immediate expansion. Major General Alexander Vandegrift wrote, "The Navajo communicators have proven invaluable. Their transmissions are faster than any encoding device and absolutely secure." A formal code talker school at Camp Pendleton began, eventually processing between 375 and 420 Navajo Marines across all 6 Marine divisions by war's end. Training included soundproofed booths and transmitting while running in exhaustion, as accuracy meant survival. The code evolved constantly. The atomic bomb became Ayashi, metal egg, and kamikaze pilots were Naitiyi, deathwind.
Japanese intelligence efforts intensified. The Imperial Navy's 4th Section assigned 30 cryptanalysts exclusively to these transmissions, trying musical analysis for tonal patterns, comparison to Native American recordings, and statistical analysis of sound frequencies. Lieutenant Commander Masao Yamada later revealed they identified some call signs and message length patterns, but without understanding the words, the value was minimal. Japanese forces were eventually ordered to capture Marine communication personnel alive, offering high rewards for a code talker or their equipment. Despite several close calls, no code talker was ever captured with their equipment intact. The Central Pacific Campaign relied heavily on the code talkers. At Tarawa in November 1943, 6 code talkers maintained communications through 76 hours of combat. Lloyd Oliver transmitted continuously for 48 hours, coordinating naval gunfire. During the Marianas Campaign at Saipan, 24 code talkers operated around the clock. Lieutenant Commander Takashi Hirakawa had decoded conventional communications to anticipate the invasion, but once Marines landed, tactical intelligence disappeared. At Peleliu, code talker Jimmy King transmitted for 6 hours after his partner was killed, coordinating artillery from 3 battalions under direct fire. The battle for Iwo Jima was their greatest contribution. Major Howard Connor coordinated the entire initial assault through the Navajo Code. 6 code talkers maintained continuous communication for the critical first 48 hours. General Tadamachi Kuribayashi's defensive plan relied on intercepting American communications to trigger counterattacks, but this plan failed completely. Over 48 hours, the 6 code talkers sent and received over 800 messages without error. They coordinated 30,000 Marines landing, naval gunfire, close air support, and tactical orders, all while under constant fire. Major Connor later testified, were it not for the Navajos, the Marines would never have taken Iwo Jima. Colonel Shigo Hayashi reported to Kuribayashi that American codes remained unbreakable. Artillery requests completed in 20 seconds through Navajo would have taken 30 minutes conventionally, making the difference between destroying positions and losing them. At Okinawa, 35 code talkers coordinated the largest Pacific assault. On August 14, 1945, code talker Teddy Draper transmitted the war's most significant message, Nehema Idigini Adenil, the Japanese surrender. After the war, American interrogators confirmed the extent of Japanese failure. Lieutenant General Seizo Arasue, Japan's chief of intelligence, admitted, "We never broke the Marine Code. We broke Army codes, Air Force codes, diplomatic traffic, but the Marine Tactical Code was completely secure." Colonel Masao Yamada admitted, "Inability to read Marine communications cost thousands of lives. Every Marine operation after 1942 was a mystery until it began." Major Hiroshi Tanaka, who survived Iwo Jima, described the psychological impact. "We couldn't understand their words. It made us feel primitive, defeated before battle began. The program remained classified for potential Cold War use until 1968, forcing code talkers to return home unable to discuss their service, even while facing discrimination and denial of voting rights. They were heroes who couldn't reveal their heroism. Many sought healing through traditional ceremonies, like the Enemy Way ceremony, to purify themselves from warfare's spiritual contamination. As Dan Erkey explained, "We had used our language to direct death. We needed it for healing." President Reagan declared August 14, 1982 as National Navajo Code Talkers Day. The most significant recognition came July 26, 2001, when President Bush presented Congressional Gold Medals to the original 29. Chester Nez responded, "We were ordinary men given an extraordinary task. We used our sacred language to help win the war." While the Navajo are the most famous, 14 other tribes, including Comanche, Hopi, and Choctaw, also contributed their languages to the war effort. John Brown Jr. observed, "They told us our language was no good. Then they needed it to win the war." The Navajo Code Talkers modernized Navajo in real time, proving that indigenous languages are not primitive but sophisticated, living resources. The Navajo Code introduced cultural encryption, security through linguistic barriers no mathematics could overcome. Colonel David Hatch noted, "They achieved something unique, a code never broken, never compromised. It proved human linguistic capability could exceed mechanical encryption." Japanese scholars revealed 30 analysts worked exclusively on the transmissions for 2 years, admitting they eventually suspected a Native American language but couldn't identify which one. Lieutenant Commander Shigeru Fukumoto admitted, "Using a native language was so simple, so elegant, we never considered it." Today, the language once forbidden is taught with pride. Peter McDonald, a surviving code talker, shared, "We showed America's strength comes from diversity. Our different languages and cultures make us stronger." The Japanese Empire, proclaiming racial superiority, was defeated partly by the very diversity they overlooked. The code talkers proved America's greatest strength wasn't industrial capacity, but human diversity. The Navajo language boarding schools tried to eliminate became key to Pacific victory. The voices speaking Navajo across Pacific battlefields carried a transcendent message. America's strength comes from many voices, peoples, and languages united in purpose, but strengthened by differences. The unbroken code remains eternal proof that many voices, peoples, and languages, united yet diverse, create the unbreakable code of freedom itself.